Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here, both in the room and for those that are virtually dialing into the session as well. As we've seen through the initial presentation, I did want to start by framing one of the core challenges that I see with digital intelligence today and scaling digital intelligence, which is a core challenge. And one of those core challenges isn't just about how we collect data. It's about making sense of customer behavior. When millions of journeys are hitting your website, your app, and those AI interfaces, and being able to understand that behavior at scale, it's a big challenge. And most organizations, well, they're rich in analytics, but poor in understanding. And while we have these dashboards to tell us what's happening, a lot of the time it's really difficult to understand the insight behind it. And I think when insight fragments, that's when decision-making becomes really difficult. It slows down, teams feel it, their level of velocity and trust in data starts to erode as well. And so that's one of the areas that we've picked up on and really wanted to work with in Telstra. And so what's really driving that challenge? So if we think about the journeys that are happening today, they don't live in one place. If you've grown up in this industry, it used to be very simple in terms of web, landing page conversion, but that no longer exists. We've got web, we've got app, we've got search, we've got messaging, and we've got these emerging AI interfaces, all of which really means we need to connect those and make sure that we have a really clear understanding of customer expectations. So while no single channel owns the experience and no single session tells the full story, that's where we really need to think about connecting these, because if you think about our customers, they don't really experience us in a silo. And so our analytics and our capabilities can't live in silos either. And that's where most organizations get stuck, because connecting insight across journeys isn't just a reporting or analytics challenge. We actually see that as an infrastructure challenge. And at Telstra, we understand infrastructure well. So Aura, that is our physical network backbone. And so at a very simple level, if you think about Aura, it expands fiber coverage, it connects our cities and data centers, and it reliably moves data around the country. We use that as a bit of an analogy for what we're building digitally, and that is all around experience observability. So that expands our insight coverage, so behavior doesn't disappear within one asset or one platform. It also connects our digital journeys across a multitude of different touchpoints. So when we think about our teams and our people, they have the right data, the right insight to make the right decisions for our customers. And that's why we're thinking about this as an infrastructure problem and an opportunity, because it's not just one asset or one platform. It's about combining all of those together to build out the best ecosystem to really help us make better and more quality decisions. So our ambition, well, it is to build a connected experience intelligence network. So as I mentioned earlier, it's not about having insight trapped within any one of these channels or assets or platforms. It's around connected observability. And making sure that, as I mentioned, as customers and prospects that are navigating through these journeys are really connected. And so that's the shift that we're really looking to make. It moves from analysing channels in isolation to understanding how experiences are connected. From pages and screens to journeys and the intent behind them. And so once insight is connected, as I mentioned, teams don't just see more. They can prioritize faster, they can align more easily, and once again, they can act with confidence. And so just like physical infrastructure, you don't build a network that powers Australia overnight. You expand it deliberately, and and where you see that customer value really intersecting with what you're trying to achieve. So that's our vision and what we're looking to build out from a digital perspective. If we think about then our journey, and we've been partnering with Contentsquare now for a number of years. We've been building out that connected intelligence network and really working through to ensure that we do reduce as many of those blind spots across our journeys. And so where we started first was around the web. Probably most of you in the room would have started there as well, depending on how long your journey has been. But we started really looking at discovery and research journeys and what customers were doing really at the top of the funnel. And then as we got really confident in that part of the journey, we started to really pick up on e-commerce, purchase journeys, and those critical sales events that happen across our environments. We then expanded onto onboarding and self-service journeys. So looking at the app and looking at millions of visits to that environment, it was really important for us not to just understand top of funnel, bottom of funnel in terms from a sales perspective, but as I mentioned before, it is a journey, not just a moment. And so how are our customers using our apps? How are they self-serving? How are they onboarding? And how does that experience come together? And so that was a really important unlock for us. Once again, not just looking at web and app, but actually looking at that as a journey that consumers go through. And then, as we've heard, the world is changing. AI interfaces are proliferating. Consumer adoption is growing. And that's where we're now starting to really invest our time and effort. So when you think about AI search and agentic AI, how do you observe those journeys? And so it doesn't become a black spot for us, but something that we can connect into and once again have that holistic, observable landscape. So for us, it's no longer about fixing just an individual step in the journey, although that still is very important. It's really starting to understand how we optimize the broader customer relationship and how we do that over time as well. And so as we think about that evolution for us at Telstra, the way we thought about observability was really in these three key stages. Stage one, as I mentioned, really around top of funnel, revenue optimization, conversion rate optimization. How do you minimize your cart abandonment, as an example? Really, really important and continues to be to this day. Stage two was around experience optimization. So once again, looking at web and app and looking at those onboarding journeys and how do we actually build a relationship and loyalty with our customer base. And stage three, well, that's looking at customer lifecycle intelligence. So this is really about that observability that spans across our full ecosystem, and that's the destination that we're working towards. It's about linking all of those different touch points and the ability for our teams to have easy access to that data and those insights as well. So I think it's a pretty exciting time in the industry, and it's a destination that we're very much looking forward to working through. But what does that look like in practice? So as I mentioned, we've been partnering with Contentsquare for a number of years now, and there's a few different examples that I thought would be great to just highlight the different capabilities that we're using and the difference that that's making for our teams as well. So we'll cover off the app, we'll cover off e-commerce, and we'll also cover off AI interfaces as well. And as I mentioned before, all of these examples are helping our teams really to align faster and act quicker on the back of it. So, example number one, the app. So from an app perspective, it is one of the most important environments that we have. We've got millions of visitors coming in. They're engaging with us. Simplex, complex transactions are all happening. But traditionally, it's been actually a really difficult environment to observe. And there have been challenges in that space. And that's where some of the traditional analytics signals that we also collect were starting to struggle. And so in this particular example, what observability allowed us to do was to really identify a very human problem. Some of you in the room may have experienced this with the apps that you're using, but essentially what we had in the app was a particular loyalty feature that we launched to market, and the teams were trying to figure out the reason behind some of the performance metrics that were lagging. And they went into the platform and they really started to understand the customer journey through journey analysis. They were looking at frustration signals, so the rage tap on the app. And essentially what they found was a really key mismatch between the design of that particular screen and what customers were expecting to happen. And so through that simple insight, they were able to catalog that, backlog that, and work with our engineering teams to actually improve that feature and the UI behind it as well. So I think that just shows the importance of obviously looking at the broader journey, but also when you do notice particular signals that are giving you the insight around frustration and where consumers are not able to progress through their journey, that you can use these types of signals to really improve the experience. So as I said, for us, the app is a really critical engagement asset, and it will continue to be. And it's fantastic that our teams have this type of insight to make these types of decisions or insights to drive the decisions to improve that experience and hopefully reduce a little bit of rage as consumers don't need to click on elements that they can't. So that was example one. Example two is around our e-commerce and our checkout journeys. So this one is interesting because some of our traditional funnel reporting that we have in place identifies why customers are dropping out. It's actually really difficult to understand why that's happening. And for those of you that are maybe a product owner or a sales specialist or an optimization specialist looking at e-commerce flows, you know how much pressure there is for those flows to perform and to obviously prevent leakage through those funnels as well. And so in this particular example, we had observability really give us a key insight in terms of customers that were looping. They were retrying, they were hesitating in this particular step. And so once again, the team was able to look at the signals that was generating and make the relevant updates to the particular journey in place and reduce the fallout that we were seeing in our journeys. And so really by combining those frustration signals, the zone analysis as well, the teams could move away from questioning around why is this happening to really understanding the journey and what to do about it. So I think that highlights one example of a checkout journey where you can really start to use the signals and the observability around those journeys to start to make tangible change. But if we think about e-commerce as a whole and the checkout flows, they are, in our case, multi-step. There's regulatory elements that wrap around them, and so they can be difficult to understand. And I think this example is really really cool because what the team did is essentially sat down and looked at end-to-end session replays, heat maps, zoning, you name it. They went through the platform and took the time to catalog all of their learnings, compare their notes, and really started to work through how they can influence the design of these the checkout journey, which is really important for us because the life cycle in terms of changing a checkout flow is a lot longer than just making a content update onto our assets. And so this was a really, really valuable exercise for our teams to go through to really understand the pain points of those customers and make the necessary changes to the journey. So I think that is one example in terms of how we're de-risking the redesign of e-commerce and those checkout flows. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out and it helps you to prioritize really where customers are struggling and where you can make those improvements. And then example number 4. So AI experiences, as I mentioned, they are proliferating. We have our own AI-driven interfaces as well, and it was actually really interesting with this particular example where we did launch a brand new AI feature. You know, months in the making, lots of effort across the business to get it live. Everyone's super excited, and the feature launches, and we're looking at the data, and initially it's the same. No uplift. And all the case studies say, get the AI capability in, 600% up in terms of the expected engagement, et cetera. We weren't seeing any of that at all. And so because we were running that as an experiment on TCOM or telstra.com.au, the team was able to compare the standard experience to the experiment that was running through the AI search experience. And using session replay and zoning analysis, something really interesting came through. And that was that the actual AI experience was taking a little bit longer to load, and our customers were just scrolling past the AI answers and going directly to the search grid. Hence why we're getting the exact same experience, the exact same results as the control version. And so on the back of that simple insight, it actually allowed us just to change the experience to let consumers and our customers know that, yes, we need a few seconds to return a result, but once that result is returned, you can see a much higher level of engagement and a lot more satisfaction. And I think, to me, this just signals the patterns that are starting to emerge. So we and I'm sure a lot of you in the room are experimenting with different AI capabilities and interfaces for customers. Sometimes it's not clear if the underlying AI LLM capability is what is driving the performance uplift, or is it a UI experience change that's driving that level of change. And so in our particular case, we didn't need to make any change to the underlying capability. It was a very simple UI update and an experience update that allowed us to essentially build trust and drive adoption. And I think importantly for the teams that worked so hard to get that live, it was a welcome sigh of relief after they saw the data and the session replays and those signals coming through. So once again, simple in terms of the insight, but the impact that has is quite large. And so where to next? Well, for us, it's not just about the platforms and the capabilities, it's also about our people. And so we need to think about how do we build the right skills at scale. So we think about experience intelligence becoming a repeatable activity across our organization. And I think when you think about these examples that I've talked through today, they don't happen by accident. It happens really when you have teams that share common goals, they can apply common methods, and they can act with confidence on the insights that are being generated. And so that's the role of DICE, or our Digital Capability Essentials. It is that common language and the standard that we try to achieve across our teams. And so that expands across product. You've got your sales and service specialists, optimization teams, analysts. It's a fantastic way for us to really take the capability and bring it to our teams and to think of a really good federated model as well. And so DICE covers those fundamentals so teams can act with confidence, but they can also apply the capability set across all of the journeys that I talked through as well in a uniform way. And so that's DICE and that's training. But I think beyond the training, what's really important and what's worked for us at Telstra is having specialist enablement SMEs, so those people that are really close to the capability, really close to the platform, partnering with different teams across the organisation to really drive adoption and to make it really specific to their particular use case and to cut through. And that's where we find adoption really grows, and you actually have we're not creating more analysts, no one's saying that, but what we are doing is democratizing that data and the ability to make decisions across those teams. And if you think about the capability that we're creating in terms of the infrastructure, in the tooling with targeted enablement, that is a great recipe in terms of driving that impact as well. And so in terms of scale and what happens, these are the 6 things that we're seeing at Telstra happen when you start to scale digital intelligence. Now, the first really is about deepening customer understanding, right? You get more and richer behavioral signals, you know more about the customer, and you can make better decisions. Number 2 is the faster insight discovery. So as I mentioned before, if you have the capability in place, you have a structured training program, and you run enablement sessions, you're actually enabling a lot more people across the business to get the insights that they need at the time they need it. So those insights don't need to travel up and down the organisation and take time to do so. They're actually sitting with those teams that are at the heart of making those changes to the digital experiences that we have. And then 3, as I mentioned, we are improving our digital experiences. So I highlighted 4 examples. There are hundreds more where the team are working through, they're cataloguing, they're making updates, some quick, others, as I mentioned, that require more of an engineering and a feature level uplift. But they all aim to uplift those experiences. 4, stronger experimentation. As I highlighted in the last example with AI-driven search, if you have the right signals coming through and the teams know how to leverage that insight, it actually allows you to both build a better hypothesis and have better hypotheses for your testing program, but also on the other side, you have much richer insight into how those experiments are performing, so really important. And then AI-ready observability. We saw some of that on the previous slides with Rachel. But for us, it's really important to think about not just the experimentation part of AI and those interfaces, but how do we actually understand that consumer behaviour? So being ready is important. And as I said, it's still very much evolving and a lot happening in that space. So having the right tools and partners is critical to understand what is happening in that channel. And then lifecycle optimization. This is really where we're striving towards. It's our destination. But it's, as I said, linking all of that together in a seamless way and working through that in a way that allows us to scale that across the organisation. And we've got hundreds of team members in Telstra Digital, and one of those pieces for us, as I said, is to democratise that data and give them that ability to really lift the customer experience at every single touch point. And so what I wanted to do as I close out this session is actually to return back to the Aura analogy. So as I mentioned, Telstra Aura, it moves data across Australia at scale. That's our physical backbone. In the same way, Experience Observability moves customer insight across our web, app, and emerging interfaces, and importantly, the journeys that connect them. And that's the shift we're making, and the long-term infrastructure for customer understanding. And so if there's one takeaway to leave you with, it's to connect insight like infrastructure, and you can optimize the relationship and not just the moment. Thank you, everyone.